I thought I knew who I was. For years, I believed I had everything figured out. I was a simple guy, but that was enough. I had a steady job at a mid-sized logistics company, a group of good friends, and most importantly, I had Mila. She was everything I ever wanted. Intelligent, driven, and seemingly perfect. Or so I thought. Let me take you back to a moment that I still can't shake. I can still remember the sounds, the laughter, the feeling in the air. It was a typical Friday evening. Mila had invited me to her company's happy hour after work, a casual social event she insisted I attend. Now, let me clarify something. Mila was on another level compared to me. Her career was thriving in a way I could only dream of, and I was the guy who didn't mind staying behind the scenes, doing my job without much fanfare. But that didn't bother me. I had what I needed until that night. I had been to a few of these work events before. I always felt like the outsider, like I was there to make her look good, but never truly a part of her world. But this time was different. I didn't expect it, but the change was unmistakable the moment I stepped into that dimly lit bar where the event was being held. Mila was already there, talking to her colleagues. I watched her from a distance, standing confidently in the center of a circle, laughing and engaging like she was born for this world of power suits and business deals. I couldn't help but feel like I was watching someone I didn't even recognize. She wasn't just my fiancée. She was becoming something else entirely, someone beyond my reach. I decided to get myself a drink to ease the growing anxiety in my chest. As I approached the bar, I noticed a few of her coworkers eyeing me. I'd always felt out of place in these situations, but tonight the feeling was amplified. The clinking of glasses, the low hum of conversation, it all felt like background noise as I watched Mila interact with her peers. I felt a pit in my stomach, wondering if they could sense my discomfort, my lack of belonging. I turned away from the bar to find a quieter spot when Mila came up behind me, her face lighting up in that smile I knew so well. She greeted me with a quick kiss on the cheek, and for a moment, it felt like everything was back to normal. But that feeling didn't last. We stood there together, but the moment Mila started talking, I felt the distance growing between us. "Tom, I have to tell you," she said, leaning in closer to me. "People here are so impressive. They're doing such big things, and it's so inspiring to see. I mean, I'm going to be managing an entire team by next quarter. It's so exciting." I smiled awkwardly, trying to be supportive. "That's great, babe. I'm really proud of you." She didn't seem to notice my discomfort. "Thanks," she replied, but her gaze kept darting back toward the group she'd been talking to. "You know, I really think you could do more. I mean, it's not that what you're doing is bad, but there's a whole world of opportunity out there. Have you thought about taking some risks?" I nodded, but a strange chill crept up my spine. It wasn't the first time Mila had made comments like this, but tonight they felt sharper, more pointed. Her words hung in the air, like she was subtly suggesting that my life wasn't enough for her. I wanted to ignore it. I wanted to believe it was just her ambition talking. But deep down, something felt different this time. We continued to chat, but it felt forced. Every sentence she spoke seemed to highlight the difference between her world and mine. I couldn't help but feel like a background character in her story, a small part of her life that she might outgrow soon enough. But then something happened that changed everything. One of Mila's colleagues, someone I had never met, came up to join our conversation. His name was Eric. He was dressed impeccably, with a confidence that was both unsettling and magnetic. He was everything I wasn't: polished, well-spoken, and incredibly successful. "Hey, Mila, how's it going?" He greeted her with a handshake. Then he turned to me. "And you must be Tom, right?" I shook his hand, trying to keep my composure. "Yeah, that's me." Eric gave me a once-over, his eyes lingering a little longer than necessary, before turning back to Mila. "I've heard a lot about you, Mila. You've been killing it lately." Mila smiled, her eyes sparkling. "Thanks, Eric. I'm just lucky to have great people around me. You know, I've been telling Tom here he needs to be a bit more aggressive in his career. You've got to make moves, right?" I laughed nervously, trying to play it cool. "Yeah, I guess so." But then Mila did something I will never forget. With a chuckle, she added, "Don't mind Tom. He's not really into all that. He's happy with his job, which I guess is fine. But, well, I always think people should reach for more." Her words hit me like a slap. I tried to smile, but it felt like the ground beneath me had shifted. In front of Eric, in front of everyone, Mila had just subtly put me in my place. She didn't respect my work, didn't understand my ambition, and she had no problem making it clear. I looked at her, trying to find the woman I thought I knew, but she was gone. The woman standing before me had become someone else. She wasn't the loving, supportive fiancée I thought I was marrying. She was someone who viewed me as a stepping stone, a person she could tolerate until something better came along. And just like that, something inside me snapped. I couldn't stand there any longer. I excused myself, feeling the weight of her words crushing me from all sides. I needed air. I needed to escape. I stepped out into the cold night, the city lights flickering in the distance. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of doubt, my breath coming in shallow gasps. What had just happened? How had everything I believed in, everything I trusted, crumbled so quickly? And that was the night I realized how far Mila was willing to go to climb the ladder of success. How far she was willing to push me down just to get to the top. What I didn't know then was that this was only the beginning. I walked around the block for what felt like hours, my mind racing. The sting of Mila's words still echoed in my ears. I kept replaying the conversation over and over in my head, each time with more clarity, each time with more pain. I couldn't figure out where it had all gone wrong. I had always supported her ambitions. I had always been proud of her. But what I heard tonight, it felt like she was looking down on me, as if my life, my job, was beneath her. I remember standing on the corner, looking at the traffic lights change, feeling an overwhelming sense of isolation. It was like I was invisible, like I was just some character in her story that didn't really matter. I couldn't shake that thought. Was I really just a background character in her life? I tried to push it out of my mind. I needed to go back inside. I needed to face her, confront her, but the idea of that made me sick. I wanted answers, but I was afraid of what they might be. When I returned to the bar, Mila was laughing, talking to Eric. She looked so at ease, so comfortable in her own skin. It was like nothing had happened, like I hadn't just witnessed her tear me down. I tried to slip back into the crowd unnoticed, but Mila saw me right away. She flashed a smile and waved me over. There was no apology in her eyes, no concern, just the same cold, distant look I had started to see more and more of lately. "Hey, Tom. There you are," she said brightly, almost too brightly. "Everyone's been asking about you." I walked over, but I couldn't bring myself to smile back. I needed some air. I muttered, my voice tight. "Yeah, I get it. It's a little overwhelming in here." She shot me a quick, dismissive glance before turning back to Eric. "Anyway, Eric was just telling me about his latest project. It sounds so exciting. You should really hear about it, Tom." Her words were like daggers. She didn't even look at me when she said them. She wasn't trying to include me. She was making it clear, without saying it outright, that I didn't belong in her world anymore. Eric, with his sharp suit and confident grin, was everything I was not. And Mila, she was thriving in his presence. I stood there, feeling smaller by the second. It wasn't just the words anymore. It was the way she looked at me, the way she didn't look at me. At that moment, I realized something I hadn't been willing to admit before. Mila didn't need me. She had everything she wanted, everything she dreamed of, and it didn't include me. I tried to stay in the conversation, but my mind was elsewhere. I could hear them talking, but I wasn't really listening. I wasn't even part of it anymore. I was just a placeholder, a prop in her carefully curated life. I tried to smile, tried to pretend like everything was fine, but the truth was, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was falling apart. And the worst part? I couldn't even tell her how I felt. I couldn't express the rage, the hurt that was burning inside me. I couldn't make her see how much she was pushing me away, how much she was hurting me. As the evening wore on, I could feel the walls closing in. My chest felt tight, like I was suffocating. I had to get out. I had to leave. But I couldn't just walk away without saying anything. So, I forced myself to smile and say, "I think I'm going to head out early. I'm not feeling too great." Mila barely looked up from her conversation. "Oh, okay. I'll catch up with you later." And that was it. That was the last real moment we shared that night. I left the bar, walked through the streets, and didn't look back. My mind was a mess, and my heart felt like it was breaking. What was I supposed to do now? How could I fix something that seemed so broken? I didn't know then, but I would soon find out. What happened next would change everything, and I wouldn't be able to turn back. The next few days felt like a blur. I went through the motions of work, grabbed dinner with friends, but none of it felt real. I couldn't stop thinking about that night, about how Mila had treated me, how she looked at me like I was a charity case in her life. I had never felt so small. It was like everything I thought we had built together was slipping through my fingers, piece by piece. I tried talking to her the next day, but she was distant, almost like nothing had happened. She wasn't cold, but there was this lack of connection, like we were strangers again. I brought it up, tried to explain how I felt, but she brushed me off. "Tom, you're overthinking it," she said with a wave of her hand. "It was just a moment. I'm just focused on work right now, okay?" But it wasn't just a moment. It was something deeper, something that had been building for months, maybe even years. I had noticed the little things, the dismissive comments, the way she always seemed so much more interested in her career than in me. But it had never hit me like this before. That afternoon, I went for a walk to clear my head. I ended up in the park, just sitting on a bench, watching people go by. I didn't even know what I was doing anymore. It was like everything had become too much. The doubts, the loneliness, the fear that I wasn't enough. That's when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, and it was a message from Mila. "Hey, can you pick up a few things from the store on your way home? I need some stuff for dinner." I stared at the message, feeling my anger flare. Was this it? Was this what she had reduced me to? A personal assistant? A guy who picked up groceries when it was convenient for her? I should have just ignored it, but instead, I typed back, trying to keep my cool. "Mila, we need to talk. I can't keep pretending like everything's okay between us." I waited, heart pounding, as the seconds ticked by. Finally, the response came. "I'm really busy right now, Tom. Can we talk later?" That was it. That was the moment I knew, deep down, that something had changed irreparably. She wasn't interested in fixing things. She wasn't interested in us. She had moved on without saying it, without even realizing it herself. I didn't know what to do, so I just sat there on the park bench, staring at my phone. It was hard to breathe, to think. It was like the air had gotten thick and heavy. I couldn't stay in this relationship anymore. Not if it meant continuing to feel invisible, small, worthless. I texted her one final message. "I'm done, Mila. I can't keep pretending." And with that, I stood up, walked away from the bench, and didn't look back. The silence after I sent that text was deafening. I had expected something. A phone call, a text, some kind of response to what I had just put out into the universe. But there was nothing. I went back to my apartment that night, and as I walked through the door, it felt like stepping into a different life, one that I no longer recognized. Mila wasn't home yet. I didn't know where she was. Part of me expected her to come in, demanding an explanation, but the longer I waited, the more I realized she might not even care enough to confront me. I spent the night pacing, trying to figure out what the hell had just happened. It wasn't just that I had reached my breaking point. It was the crushing realization that Mila didn't need me. She had already moved on, even if she didn't know it yet. I had been nothing more than a support system for her career, a placeholder, a convenient part of her life that could be replaced with a more successful version of myself, or more likely, someone who could take her places she wanted to go. The next day, I woke up early. My phone was still silent. I didn't know what I expected from Mila, but I realized I couldn't wait for her to make the first move. I had to take control. But as I looked around the empty apartment, the quiet stillness settling like a weight on my chest, I felt a sense of finality. That afternoon, I met up with a close friend of mine, Alex. He'd been there through some of my roughest patches, and I needed someone to talk to. We sat in a quiet cafe, the sound of clinking cups and muffled conversations swirling around us. It was almost calming, but my mind was racing. "How are you holding up?" Alex asked as he took a sip of his coffee, his eyes studying me. "I don't even know," I replied, running my hands through my hair. "It's like I woke up one day and realized I've been living in a relationship that doesn't exist anymore. Mila's gone. She just doesn't care anymore." Alex was quiet for a moment, letting the words hang in the air before responding. "You've been telling me for a while now that something felt off. That she was, I don't know, distant. You weren't imagining it, Tom." I nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. I kept telling myself it was just work stress, that it was just a phase. But this is something else. It's like she's building her life around me being there, but she doesn't really see me anymore. Alex leaned forward, his voice lowering. "You have to decide what you want to do next. Because right now, you're stuck in this loop where you're trying to get something from her that she doesn't even realize she's withholding. And you're only going to hurt yourself more if you keep holding on." I knew he was right, but admitting it out loud made my chest tighten. I had invested so much into Mila, so much into this relationship that walking away seemed impossible. But at that moment, I realized it wasn't about me anymore. It was about my own survival, my own happiness. Mila had long since stopped being a partner. She was a person I was clinging to, hoping she would see me again, but I was only torturing myself. That night, as I returned to the apartment, I noticed Mila's things were still everywhere. Her shoes by the door, her coat hanging on the back of a chair. The apartment felt even emptier now, like a shell of what it used to be. I sat down on the couch, staring at the space where she would usually sit. The thought of confronting her again felt like I was preparing for a battle I didn't want to fight. But just then, I heard the door click open. Mila was home. She walked in, looking tired but still carrying that confident air about her. She glanced over at me but didn't say anything, just dropped her bag by the door and walked into the kitchen. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. This was it, the moment where everything would either break or rebuild. I waited for her to speak first, but the silence between us grew thicker, more suffocating. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she turned to me. "You left yesterday. What's going on with you?" The casual tone in her voice made my blood run cold. She still didn't understand. She still didn't get it. I stood up, the weight of everything I had been holding back crashing down on me. "I think you know exactly what's going on, Mila. You don't see me anymore. You haven't for a long time. This whole thing, it's been about you for so long. And I've just been here, waiting for you to notice, but you don't. You don't care about me." Her expression faltered, just for a second, but it was enough for me to see the cracks starting to form in the facade she had built. I don't understand," she said, her voice quieter now. "This is about your career, right? You've been unhappy with it. I'm just trying to push you to be better." I shook my head, bitter laughter escaping my lips. "This isn't about my career, Mila. It's about you constantly making me feel like I'm not good enough. Like I'm a project you're trying to fix, instead of a person you're supposed to love." For a moment, there was nothing but silence between us. She looked at me, and I could see the confusion in her eyes. But there was something else there too, something colder. It was as if she was finally realizing I wasn't going to let her keep treating me like this. Maybe we do need some space," she said slowly, her words lacking conviction. "I don't know what you want from me right now, Tom." I didn't have the energy to argue anymore. I had already said everything that needed to be said. The truth was there, hanging between us like a bitter taste. "Maybe space is exactly what I need," I replied quietly, turning away. "Maybe I need to stop waiting for you to finally see me." I walked out of the room, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally doing something for myself. I had no idea what would come next, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to wait around for her to fix this. Not anymore. The days that followed felt like a slow-motion train wreck. Every time I walked into the apartment, there was a heaviness in the air that I couldn't shake. Mila and I barely spoke. The tension between us was thick enough to cut with a knife. She was in and out of the apartment, buried in work, always on her phone, always somewhere else. And I was just there, existing, but I couldn't let it go. I knew something had shifted, and deep down, I felt like I had to confront it, even if I wasn't sure how. I kept telling myself I'd wait for her to say something, to reach out, but days turned into weeks, and she said nothing. Not even a single word of apology. It was as if I didn't matter enough to even acknowledge. One night, I decided enough was enough. I couldn't keep pretending like I was fine with how things were. I needed to understand what was going on. Why had she suddenly become so distant? Why did everything feel so fragile? Mila had been gone the entire evening. I was sitting on the couch, mindlessly flipping through TV channels when the door opened. She walked in, looking exhausted but still exuding that air of superiority she'd worn so many times before. I stayed silent, waiting for her to notice me. But she didn't. She dropped her keys on the counter, glanced at me for half a second, and then went straight into the kitchen without a word. That was it. I'd had enough. I stood up, my chest tight with frustration, and followed her into the kitchen. "Mila," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk." She didn't even look up at me as she opened the fridge. "Not now, Tom. I'm really tired." I could feel the anger bubbling inside me. "No, now." I took a step closer, my voice rising. "You can't just keep ignoring this. You can't pretend everything's fine when it's not. You're so wrapped up in yourself, you don't even care that I'm falling apart over here." Mila stopped, the words finally breaking through her cold exterior. She turned to face me, her expression shifting from annoyance to something else, something I couldn't place. What do you want from me, Tom? I don't have time for this. I've got a million things on my plate. You want me to just stay here, silent, while you chase your career? I shot back. Is that it? You don't care about me anymore, do you? There was a long pause, and I could see the faintest flicker of guilt in her eyes. But just as quickly, it disappeared, replaced by that wall she had built so many times before. You're being dramatic, she replied, turning back to the fridge like nothing was wrong. You don't understand, Tom. You're not the only one with a life here. The finality of her words hit me like a slap. I stared at her, feeling my heart sink. She didn't even try to understand where I was coming from. She couldn't even see that I had been there for her, always, and now she couldn't even be bothered to acknowledge my pain. I stood there, rooted to the spot, trying to find something in her eyes, anything that would tell me that the woman I once knew was still there. But there was nothing, just a cold indifference. I took a step back, my throat tightening. I can't do this anymore, Mila. I can't keep pretending like this relationship is something it's not. She didn't answer. She didn't even look at me. She just kept pulling things out of the fridge, as if nothing had just been said. That was it. The final straw. I couldn't stand there anymore, waiting for her to finally see me. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the room, not sure where I was going, but knowing I couldn't stay here. Not like this. Not anymore. The next few days were a blur of silence. The apartment felt colder, emptier. I had no idea what I was supposed to do anymore. Mila was out of the house even more now. She came home late, barely spoke to me, and when she did, it was just to ask about something trivial. I could feel myself getting lost in this void between us, suffocating under the weight of her indifference. I tried to fill the space with anything that could distract me, work, a night out with friends, but nothing helped. Every night I'd come home to that same silence. No Mila asking about my day, no shared dinner, no laughter. Just the eerie quiet that stretched between us like a chasm I couldn't bridge. One evening, I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone when I heard the door open. Mila came in, as usual, looking put together but distant. Her eyes briefly met mine before she turned away, walking past me without a word. That was when I knew. This wasn't a phase. She wasn't just busy. She was pulling away, and I had finally seen it for what it was. I wasn't sure why I did it, but I followed her to the bedroom. I stood in the doorway, watching as she started changing, taking off her work clothes, but it felt so distant. She didn't even acknowledge me. She didn't ask how I was, or if I'd eaten. It was like I didn't exist to her anymore. Finally, I spoke. Mila, we need to talk. She didn't even look up, pulling off her shirt with quick, practiced motions. Not now, Tom. I'm really tired. Her response struck me harder than anything else she'd said in weeks. You're tired? Or is it that you're just done? I didn't want to say it, but the words came out before I could stop them. She froze for a second, then sighed, still not meeting my eyes. I don't know what you want from me. You're always so dramatic. The sting of her words hit harder than I expected. I had never felt so invisible. She was right there, physically, but emotionally, I couldn't reach her anymore. I don't want anything from you, Mila. I just want you to see me, to care. For a moment, she stood still, her back to me. And then, almost too casually, she said, maybe it's just not working anymore, Tom. Maybe we've outgrown each other. I stood frozen, the weight of her words crashing over me. Outgrown each other? Was that what she thought? After everything we'd been through, everything we'd built together? Before I could say another word, she turned and walked into the bathroom, leaving me standing in the doorway, speechless. I had nothing left to say. I had tried, but she had already made up her mind. The thought of this being the end of everything we had felt suffocating. I walked out of the room, feeling like I had just lost a battle I didn't even know I was fighting. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, the image of Mila's cold indifference flashed in my mind. I kept hearing her words echoing. Maybe we've outgrown each other. Outgrown each other. It felt like a punch in the gut. I had hoped, at least, that she would fight for us. But instead, it was as if I was already nothing more than an afterthought in her life. The next morning, I woke up to find her side of the bed empty, as it had been for the past few nights. There was no note, no text. She had left for work, and I was left with the uncomfortable stillness that filled the apartment. I sat there for a while, staring at the empty space where she had once been, wondering how we got here. As the day went on, I tried to keep busy, but the weight of everything I was feeling became unbearable. I knew I couldn't let this go on anymore. I had to do something. But what? The answer came when I checked my phone, and I saw a message from Mila. It wasn't the kind of message I expected, though. It wasn't an apology or a conversation starter. It was simple. I'm going to stay at my friend's place tonight. We need some space. Space. That word again. It was like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. She needed space, but she had already checked out. I wasn't even worth the effort to talk to anymore. I felt it in my bones. This was over. She had made up her mind, and there was no coming back from it. I spent the rest of the day walking aimlessly around the city, trying to distract myself. But everywhere I went, everything reminded me of her. The coffee shop we used to go to. The park bench we sat on when we first moved in together. I couldn't escape it. All the memories that once felt comforting now just felt like chains, holding me in a place I didn't want to be. By the time evening came, I found myself back at the apartment, sitting in the same spot where I had sat that morning. I couldn't deny it any longer. The relationship I had clung to for so long was slipping through my fingers, and Mila wasn't even trying to hold on. As the hours dragged by, I finally made a decision. It wasn't going to get better. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine, waiting for something to change when she was clearly done with me. So, I took out my phone and sent her one last message. I think we both know this is over. I'm done, Mila. The message didn't even have time to sink in before I got up and started packing my things. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay here anymore. I couldn't keep living in this empty space, hoping for something that wasn't coming. As I loaded my bag into the car, I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. I was letting go, finally, but it didn't make the pain go away. I had given everything to this relationship, and now I was walking away, unsure of what came next. When I walked out of that apartment for the last time, I didn't look back. The door clicked shut behind me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. But as I drove away, part of me wondered if I had made the right choice, or if I was just running from something I couldn't fix. Either way, I had crossed the line. I was done waiting. The road ahead wasn't easy. I'll admit that. Leaving behind the life I thought I had with Mila felt like walking into the unknown. But as the days went by, something unexpected started to happen. I started to breathe again. I started to remember who I was before I got lost in the relationship. I spent time with friends, rediscovered old hobbies, and found peace in places I hadn't noticed in years. One evening, about a month after everything ended, I found myself sitting at a cafe, enjoying the evening air, when I ran into someone. It was someone I hadn't seen in years, Clara, an old friend from college. We exchanged a few awkward greetings, but it felt nice. There was no pressure, no expectations, just two people reconnecting over coffee. As the conversation flowed, I realized how much I had missed this real connection. No pretenses, no trying to be someone I wasn't. I felt light, and for the first time in a long while, I could see a future where I wasn't just an accessory in someone else's world. Clara and I started meeting up more. It was simple at first: dinner, drinks, long walks talking about everything and nothing. The more time I spent with her, the more I realized how much I had missed the person I used to be. The person who loved life, who embraced the messiness of it all, without feeling the constant pressure of being perfect. With Clara, there was no judgment, no competition. She just accepted me. It wasn't about rushing into anything. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had room to grow, to rediscover the parts of myself that had been buried under years of trying to keep a relationship afloat. I was finally free, not just from Mila, but from the idea that my worth was tied to someone else's validation. I had spent so long looking for approval from people who didn't really see me, that I'd forgotten to appreciate who I was without anyone else's input. Months went by, and life slowly shifted. I found a new direction in my career, something that challenged me, something that made me feel alive again. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. It was my own. Then one day, Clara and I were sitting in that same cafe, laughing over a shared joke when she looked at me and said, "You know, I think we're both exactly where we need to be." I smiled, feeling a warmth that had been absent for so long. "Yeah," I said softly, "I think you're right." It wasn't a grand, dramatic change. It wasn't some big moment of realization that everything was perfect, but I had finally found my way back to myself. I had learned that life moves on, and with it comes new opportunities, new people, new experiences, and a better understanding of who I am. I wasn't the same person I was before all of this started, but that wasn't a bad thing. I was stronger, wiser, and, most importantly, I was whole again. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I looked across the table at Clara and felt a quiet sense of peace. Life had a funny way of turning things around when you least expected it, and for the first time in a long time, I was excited about the future. And this was just the beginning.